Well, good afternoon. This is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant afternoon. And I came across this article the other day in Zero Hedge, which is still a fantastic news source. If you haven't been there, Zero Hedge is the place to go. And this was a story coming out of Germany. And basically the mayor of Essen was saying that just about every town in Germany is now bankrupt. They cannot put forward a balanced budget. And the reason why this is very, very interesting is because, Germany was basically the strong man of Europe. Now, as I read the article, you'll see what the problems are and what happened. But a huge part of it is their green agenda, their green policy. They went so far into this. Germany is probably one of the leaders now in green technology. And but let's just pop back to Sri Lanka, and and it's amazing that these people did not learn from this lesson in Sri Lanka, and because they did the same thing. They bought in 100% into the whole going organic, going green, low carbon technology, all of this kind of stuff, and the country just absolutely caved in on itself. And so anyway, let me just read you that story. It's just a little piece out of Wikipedia, but it'll give you an idea of what happened in Sri Lanka. Here we go. The Sri Lankan economic crisis is an economic crisis in Sri Lanka that started in 2019. It is the country's worst economic crisis since its independence in 1948. It has led to unprecedented levels of inflation, near depletion of foreign exchange reserves, shortages of medical supplies, and an increase in prices of basic commodities. The crisis is said to have begun due to multiple compounding factors like tax cuts, money creation, a nationwide policy to shift to organic or biological farming, the 2019 Sri Lankan Easter bombings, and the impact of the CV-19 pandemic in Sri Lanka. The subsequent economic hardships resulted in the 2022 Sri Lankan protests, and let me tell you, they were pretty brutal too. The president, I believe, was drowned in his own swimming pool, and several other members of government either lost their lives or fled the country in fear for loss of life. Sri Lanka received a lifeline in the form of an Indian line of credit amounting to $4 billion. This substantial credit infusion served to cover the cost of importing essential goods and fuel. As a result, the foreign currency reserves of debt-ridden Sri Lanka improved and reached $2.69 billion. So, yes, it sort of paints a pretty bland picture here, but there was a complete implosion. Farming imploded, and I'm an organic gardener myself, don't get me wrong, but the transition was too quick, and farmers didn't have enough time to deal with the problems as they came one at a time. They sort of came all at once, and this basically led to a collapse of the food production in that country. And so Sri Lanka, in the scheme of things, is not a very big area. Yes, well, they took out a $4 billion loan, and interestingly enough, this happens in the municipality up in City of Quarter Lakes, where they have to have a certain amount of reserves. And it says in the article, as you saw, that they now have $2.8 billion in reserves, but that's borrowed money. And the same thing happened in City of Quarter Lakes. Their reserves were low, so they borrowed money to top up the reserves, but that debt goes into a different folder. It's a different part of the budget, and so you don't sort of see the connection between the two. But now Germany has done the same thing. They've gone this hook, line, and sinker, and it has just absolutely destroyed their country. And now, as a few people have predicted, there isn't a country is actually going to survive what is coming through this drowning in debt situation that we're all in. But Europe is going to be the first to go down, because what you're seeing in Germany is mirrored in France, in the UK, in Spain, in Italy, Poland, you name it. All of these countries are up to their eyeballs in debt. Okay, and now that chicken has come home to roost, and they're all in serious trouble. And the same thing's going on in Canada. The same thing is going on in Canada, and that's why I'm bringing this to your attention, because this is a premonition. Okay, this is forewarning. This is actually in real time. You're seeing what happens when you go completely green. You push your energy costs completely out of reach of the average person. You have industry closes down. Something like 60% of the smelters across Europe have shuttered their doors because they just can't afford the energy to smelt the metal. So this has meant layoffs all over the place. Volkswagen, for the first time in its history, is laying off workers. I mean, that is absolutely stunning. Okay, and it's because they're being forced into making electric cars, and they cannot sell enough electric cars to meet their quota. So of course they're going to be fined. So they're going to lose even more money on the whole deal. And now you're seeing worldwide, just about every large auto company is rolling back the whole electric car idea because people just don't want them. They're inconvenient. You have range anxiety from the minute you get them, and now there is connection anxiety because you can't just put a couple of bucks in these machines. No, you have to connect through your phone. And if you're in an area or if there's an issue with connectivity, guess what? that charger ain't working. So this, ladies and gentlemen, you are witnessing the fool's ideology falling apart in front of your eyes. Now, I said what has to happen in this new world order, the World Economic Forum, their whole goal of takeover and changing the whole way we manage things. Okay, they have to do two things simultaneously. Basically, they have to pull the rug out from underneath people's feet, virtually worldwide, and they have to offer a suitable solution so those who are now basically free-falling in mid-air will accept that solution, even if it's a bitter pill. Okay, now I don't know whether they can give that solution, and as we're seeing with this ideology, all of the holes and flaws are just being poked into the whole thing. But there is one thing that I'm absolutely certain of, that they are capable of, and they will be 100% successful at. And that's the second thing, is they will be pulling the rug out from underneath your feet. They can do that. Okay, and this is how they're doing it, through these absolutely ludicrous policy decisions. It is just absolutely insane. But for Germany, see, like I say, the euro is really the Deutschmark. Okay, the ECB, the European Central Bank, is pretty much the Bundesbank. Okay, the German central bank. They are indistinguishable. If they are, you can slide a razor blade in the division between those two institutions, because they are locked hands and foot in the same goals and things going forward. Okay, so now Germany, let's say if Germany is going down and every other country is mirroring that, we are going to see the same shocking demise in Canada. And like I say, this is a forewarning of what happens when you make poor policy decisions. And the government that we have now in Canada is so WEF, it's unbelievable. There's so many people still in that cabinet. I mean, this is still the Trudeau government, even if Carney is the figurehead up there, and he is a trustee for the WEF. He's a big shot. Okay, I see Chrystia Freeland is running away. The rats are leaving the sinking ship because they all see this is coming undone at the seams, and we, as per usual, will be left picking up the pieces for these idiot policies. Now, I don't know if this is reversible. Well, wait, okay, first of all, let me just read you the article, okay, from Zero Hedge, and I'll come back and do a quick wrap-up. Okay, here we go. From Zero Hedge, almost every German city is now on the verge of bankruptcy. Germany's cities are on the verge of a massive financial crisis, with the mayor of Essen warning that the data shows that almost every single city in the country is nearly bankrupt. Currently, the total deficit for all German cities in 2025 is 30 billion euros, which jumped from last year's deficit of 24 billion euros. Essen's mayor, Thomas Kufen, CDU, who is also a member of the CDU Federal Executive Board, is sounding the alarm. Almost every German city is now on the verge of bankruptcy. In North Rhine-Westphalia alone, only 10 out of 396 cities and municipalities can present a balanced budget, and these alarming figures from Germany's largest federal state can be applied to the entire country, he said. Mayor Kufen stressed that the crisis is universal, affecting municipalities regardless of their location. What's new is that all the cities have their backs against the wall, he told Bild newspaper. He warned that budget freezes would now have to be imposed everywhere, including in many cities previously considered wealthy. Kufen emphasized the need for a national discussion on affordability. We have to talk about what we can do so that our welfare state itself does not become a social case. This means what do we want to afford and what else can we afford. However, he noted that cities cannot make these crucial decisions themselves, only the federal government can. Kufen illustrated the crisis with figures from his own city, Essen, which has a population of nearly 600,000. The city had planned a balanced budget for 2025, but instead of a slight increase of 1.7 million euros, we currently have a deficit of 123 million, he calculated. Once again, refugee accommodation and integration are near the top of the list for reasons why the city is seeing a budget shortfall. Far from being a solution to Germany's budget and pension crisis, they have become a massive financial burden for the country, costing at least 50 billion euros a year in social integration, housing and benefits. Now, I'm glad he said that. That's the first time I have seen this written down or said by someone in that position. And it says, far from being a solution to Germany's budget and pension crisis. You see, they were importing these people to rescue the pension and the absolute miscalculation they made over that. So, yes, big error, because we're doing the same here. However, there are also many more hidden costs to mass immigration, including rising housing prices, healthcare costs, education costs for an increasingly foreign student population, and housing a huge number of foreigners in German prisons and psychiatric institutions. Just like Essen, even major cities like Berlin are seeing spiraling costs due to mass immigration, leading to large-scale debt required to keep the cities running. Some research studies have indicated that the overall cost of immigration has already cost Germany trillions and could reach 20 trillion euros if migration numbers do not fall. Kufen points to education and social spending as burdens on his city as well, and in many ways, foreigners here account for huge costs. For example, official statistics from Essen indicate there are approximately 22,730 primary school students enrolled in Essen, and out of these, about 5,565 are classified as non-German, making up roughly 24.5% of primary school students in the city. If this definition is expanded to those with an immigration background, then the figures increase to 35%. As within states and cities across the country, the non-German student population has in general been a massive budget burden, as these students need extra integration courses and more money per student to compensate for educational deficits. When it comes to social spending, approximately 63% of all welfare recipients in Germany are foreigners or have a foreign background, despite being a much smaller share of the population. In regard to Essen, there are also increased personnel costs due to a public sector tariff increase. As a consequence, Kufen had to impose restrictive household management in Essen. This means the city is essentially only paying what it is legally required, such as social assistance and wages. For all other expenses over 5,000 euros, you need an extra permit from the treasurer. Summarizing the situation, Kufen said, there's not much left. Addressing the federal government's gigantic debt package intended to help cities, Kufen explained that Essen will receive €335 million over the next 12 years, equating to just €28 million a year. He argued this was insufficient because the funding is primarily intended to finance construction projects. In Essen, that would, with luck, be enough for 2.5 schools, Kufen said, noting that costs have exploded, especially when it comes to construction. Kufen made it clear he doesn't want to sound ungrateful. We're happy to take the money, but if someone thinks that Berlin or Dusseldorf will solve all my problems, all I can say is it will help alleviate them, but we still have a lot to struggle with. Now, this is an interesting line. The mayor stressed that what cities truly need is not just money for investments, but simply less bureaucracy, easier awards, and fewer requirements so that I can end up doing more with the little money. He also warned that if the state cannot function, then democracy is under threat, saying, because that's where citizens find out whether the state works, whether I can get a daycare place or whether the street lamps come on at night. If you can no longer do all of this, people who pay taxes get the impression that politicians are not dealing with it properly, and that's dangerous. Whoa, I think we've already figured that out, buddy. It's not just the government either, with data showing that residents in Essen are taking on more and more personal debt. There we go, another big issue. Due to rising debt to pay rising rents, electricity, and even food prices, which have risen further in recent months. Now, going into debt to pay for basic needs, that is so unbelievably dangerous. You know, if you can't pay for rising rent, electricity, and food prices from your regular wages, going into debt is not going to solve the problem. The number of people who've taken on so much debt that they cannot pay it back has risen for the first time in 6 years as well, reaching 5.7 million people who are defined as over-indebted. The report also warns that this trend is expected to worsen due to rising unemployment. You see, and what caused the unemployment? Let me just hear you. Oh, the closing of factories. The allowing of unrestricted imports that compete unfairly with your products. The raising of energy prices to a point where businesses cannot function anymore. There you go. That's where the unemployment is coming from. So you can see this is a snake basically devouring its own self, tail first. Now, I don't know if these things are reversible, if these policies are reversible. We're going to see the US is running that experiment. President Trump has decided that these are not good policies, and we will be able to see who comes out on top of all of this. And I can see why America will be the last person to go down, or the last country to go down, if it goes down. Because all of these other countries are so far in trouble. It is unbelievable. And I don't know whether we, the people, can do anything about that. We can certainly speak up. We can certainly voice our opinions. We can certainly contact our MPs and representatives and what have you at every level. You know, there was a thing up in City of Quarter Lakes about this, is it LiDAR or something? There's this new radar system going in, and, you know, the people are up in arms about it because of the possible danger from leaked radiation, and I mean, I don't know all the details of it, but, you know, City of Quarter Lakes has 72,000 people, and 75 showed up to the public meeting. There you go. There is your answer right there. If you want to know why all of this crap is happening, it's because the world is run by people who show up. And unfortunately, people have not been showing up and voicing their opinions. I know a lot of there's been stuff that has been done, you know, sotto voce and under the table, so it hasn't been exactly clear what has been going on. But certainly myself and other friends and I, when we got Citizens for Direct Democracy together, we did a lot of investigating. We looked into the books, and we saw all of the shenanigans that were taking place in the City of Quarter Lakes. So, and it's happening everywhere. Everywhere where you see a CAO in charge of the council staff, there you go. You've got a WEF agenda taking place under this person. So, as they say at weddings, speak now or forever hold your peace, because this will be relentless. You know, they cannot stop. Too much has happened now, and they know that if their plan fails, they will be held to pay. And so they're going to push like crazy to get this going, and it is going to take a mighty force of will and civil disobedience and people getting on board incredibly quickly. You know, like with the ostrich, I'll bring up the ostriches again. You know, there should have been 10,000 people there virtually overnight, incensed at what was happening. And you get those kind of numbers showing up, you know, that becomes a serious force to be reckoned with. You don't have to be violent. You just have to show up. Okay? So, anyway, this is just an example, and it's a good example because, like I say, Germany was the backbone of Europe. Germany was what the whole idea of Germany, the whole idea of Europe rested upon, was the strength of Germany. And of course this began back, you know, in 1936 to 1945. This was the ideology of one particular man, we'll call him Mr. Hilter. And this, of course, is his wet dream. And when that conflict was over, those people, those tops of department, they carried that ideology on, and that's what the WEF is actually the phoenix rising out of the ashes of that previous organization. Okay, and that's where the similarities are, why you see those similarities. And have no doubt in your minds, my friend, it will be just as harsh and unforgiving and as merciless as that ideology was during the second of the world wars. Okay, so just bear that in mind, you know, and we've seen this is coming. We can see, like I say, this article highlights the fact that this is happening in real time. This is not something in the far off future anymore. This is, happening in real time. So I would govern yourselves accordingly, if I may be so bold to say so. So be brave, stay calm, and don't wait for the sign. The sign's already here. The signs are already here. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all again for joining me on this journey, this adventure, and boy, it's going to be an adventure. And but if you've enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe below. And in the meantime, this is Houndog Steve wishing you a very pleasant afternoon, and we'll talk very, very shortly. See you now. Bye.